Hello, my name is Dr. Mary O'Kane. I'm a lecturer in psychology and early education, and I'd like to say thank you to Meath County Council Library Service for inviting me to make this short video for you as part of the Healthy Ireland at Your Library initiative. This video is going to look at how we can support children who are struggling with anxiety, and it's called Don't Be a Second Chicken. Okay, so I wanted to start just by giving you some figures on levels of anxiety in children in Ireland today. There was a big research project done by the Royal College of Surgeons, a lady called Mary Cannon, and she found that by the age of 15, 1 in 3 of our children has struggled with some mental health difficulty. And following on from that, back at about November 2019, the My World 2 survey found similar findings. Levels of severe anxiety are definitely on the rise in Irish children today. One of the really interesting things that study found, and it was a really large scale study, more than 19,000 children and teenagers, but a really interesting thing it found was something that we probably have already known in psychology and education for some time, and that is stemming from attachment theory. The presence of one good adult, so one supportive connection, an adult that the child has in their life that they really connect with and that they know is really trying to understand and support them, makes a huge difference. So that reminds us to come back and, I suppose, look at ourselves and the role that we play as parents in supporting anxious children. So before I look at our role, I wanted to just briefly look at the impact that anxiety has on our child. I suppose, if you like, the science behind what is happening when they feel anxious. And anxiety stems from a part of our brain called the limbic system. And a very important part of that system is right in the center of our brains, and it's called the amygdala. And this is the seat of the fight or flight instinct. So if we think about the amygdala and we tell our children to think about this little fella in the center of our brains, if we think about him as a little warrior trying to protect our children from any potential danger in the world. So if our child is walking along and they hear something or they see something out of the corner of their eye that could potentially be a danger, before they have a chance to respond and to react to that danger and to make an assessment, a logical assessment of risk, before they have the chance to do that, the amygdala in the center of their brain responds. So it's like our body's little internal alarm system, trying to keep us safe, but sometimes it responds to perceived danger as well as real danger. So say back in hunter-gatherer times, if I was out hunting or gathering and I heard a rustle in the bushes that might potentially be a lion or a tiger, and as I said, before I had a chance to respond, the amygdala would have recognized potential danger. And when it does that, it sets off a chemical reaction within our bodies. So the first thing we're aware of is the physical sensations. So our heart might beat more quickly, and we might feel breathless, our breathing can become quite shallow, our arms can feel a little bit shaky because adrenaline and cortisol are starting to pump around our body, causing reactions that are actually designed to help us either fight or flight. So we may need to run, or we may need to respond and protect ourselves. So all these responses are taking place inside our body to protect us. So back in hunter-gatherer times, that potentially made an awful lot of sense, and it kept us safe. It was designed for survival. But now, for some of our young children who are struggling with anxiety, it's as if the amygdala hasn't caught up with the modern world. So within our child's day, various different things might cause that same chemical reaction, that same response in their bodies as would have been caused by that tiger in the bushes back in hunter-gatherer times. So when this response happens within our body, doesn't feel very good. Actually, the whole process is designed to protect us, to keep us safe. This is literally like a little warrior inside us trying to protect us. However, the physical manifestations are difficult. They're very difficult to deal with. So that pounding heart, the feeling of breathlessness, the adrenaline running through our system can actually be as frightening as the response, the immediate response. It can become a little bit like a vicious circle for some children. If I can use an example of a smoke alarm in your house. So if you have a smoke alarm in your house and you have a child who really is quite laid back, wouldn't really struggle with anxiety, and the child sitting in the sitting room hears that smoke alarm go off in your kitchen. So that child would probably sit there and think, oh, there's the smoke alarm, suppose I should get up and have a look. They recognise it's an alarm and they should respond. So they get up, they respond to the alarm, they go into the kitchen and they evaluate the situation. So they look around and maybe they will see that you've burnt toast sitting in the toaster. So they evaluate what's happening, they make a judgment call on the level of danger. They see the burnt toast and they think, not too bad. They probably go and get a tea towel and they flap that tea towel. They reset your smoke alarm. That's very similar to how our children's brains respond to perceived anxiety, perceived danger. So say now, this time, you have a child who struggles with anxiety. So that child is sitting in the sitting room and they hear the smoke alarm. So this child will probably respond immediately. Alarm, danger, response. Up they get, they go into the kitchen. They are evaluating danger, same system. They look and they see the smouldering toast in the toaster. They look and they make an evaluation. It's only burnt toast. But it's as if for this child, their assessment of risk isn't quite at the same level of the previous child. So they see the burnt toast, but then they think, oh, that's still smouldering. Potentially that could still go on fire. I'm not entirely convinced that I'm really safe here. So they go and they get their tea towel and they attempt to flap, to reset their alarm, but their heart really isn't in it the same way. It's as if for some of our children, that whole system is just set a tiny bit too sensitively. So perhaps their alarm is a little bit oversensitive. Their ability to evaluate isn't quite as strong. The difference between real danger and perceived danger. So their risk assessment is slightly off kilter. And then their ability to reset that system is slightly off. So for some of our children, that the same experience of the smoke alarm responding to the burnt toast in the toaster is handled in a slightly different way. So what can we do to support those children? The first thing that we can do is look at ourselves. One of the most important things that we can do for a child in this situation is be present ourselves and provide a connection that is providing empathy and reassurance. So going back to that My World 2 survey, what did those findings say? The presence of that one good adult, that one support connection there can make a real difference. We can't tell our children there is no danger in the world. We can't tell our children they will never come up against a stressful situation. But what we can do is provide reassurance that we are there and we can get through this together. So a confident reassurance. There is a wonderful book on supporting anxious children called The Opposite of Worry by a man called Lawrence Cohen. If you want to go into any of the Meath Library branches at the moment online, see if you can reserve it. I'm sure they'd be able to get a copy and put it on hold for you. Wonderful book. In this book, Lawrence Cohen tells the story of a research project that he did in high school, and he relates it to how we as parents support children when they are struggling with anxiety. The story is about chickens. So, when he was in high school, Lawrence Cohen was doing this piece of research on chickens. When a chicken is under stress, when a chicken is potentially in danger, I described our fight or flight instinct that our child is going through when faced with danger. Actually, that really is fight, flight, or freeze, just a little bit too difficult to say. Well, in the chicken population, they respond with freeze, and it's called tonic immobilization. You may have heard it called playing possum. So if a chicken is under threat, its automatic response is to freeze. So go into this state of tonic immobilization. And I suppose it's a bit like if I see a vulture flying overhead and I'm a chicken, no chicken to be seen here, I'm a rock, absolutely no chicken. So the chicken goes into this state. As part of his research project, Lawrence Cohen timed how long chickens stay in that state of tonic immobilization. And he found roughly they stay in that state for about a minute or so. So he experimented with different situations. What he found was if he introduced a second chicken into the equation, and if that second chicken was put in a position where it immediately sees that first chicken frozen, the second chicken freezes as well. It's as if the second chicken I don't need to see the vulture, I see him frozen and I think, whoa, there's something going on here, so I freeze as well. So the two chickens freeze. But he studied how long they froze for. And if the second chicken sees that first chicken frozen, he found on average they freeze for up to 5 minutes. He tried a little experiment then. What he did this time was he introduced a second chicken, but he let that first chicken just see another chicken moseying along, unaware that I'm frozen. And the first chicken was more likely to relax and unfreeze. Interestingly, the chickens froze for longest if they caught sight of their own reflection in a mirror, because it had that knock-on effect of freezing and my reflection is freezing. So, what is the impact on us for parents? Well, Lawrence Cohen looked at chickens' responses to danger and he related them to how we as parents respond to our children. Don't be the second chicken. His argument is that very often as parents, when we see our child become anxious, what do? We respond in an anxious way, therefore having a knock-on effect on our child. In effect, we're telling the world, yes, the child, you're right, this world is a scary place. You're feeling anxious. I'm getting anxious. The child thinks, yeah, I'm right. I'm right to be anxious here. He reminds us to really be aware of how we respond to our children when they're struggling with anxiety. Now, I should hold my hand up at this point and say, that first statistic I gave you from the Mary Cannon research, where 1 in 3 of our children would have some mental health difficulty at some point in their lives, I'm a mother of 3 and one of my children struggles with anxiety. And I know when I read Lawrence Cohen's book, I actually considered my own parenting. And even though I would say I'm not particularly an anxious parent, I could recognize that I parent my child who struggles with anxiety in a more anxious way than I parent my other 2 children. So what can we do about it? Well, the first thing Lawrence Cohen suggests is to step back, and in a situation where we see that our child is really struggling with something, they're feeling really anxious, is to first of all empathy is always first. Let them know that we can see they're struggling. So it's connection. Connection comes before everything else with our child. We want to connect with them. We want to be that one good adult. We want them to know that we get that this is hard, that this is difficult. So the first thing is that connection. So, I'm looking at you and you look like you're struggling. I'm guessing this is hard for you. I'm guessing that you're having a difficulty here. Words like that should just let them know. I'm looking at you and I can see there's something going on. But his advice is to say to them, can I get you to look in my eyes and tell me if I look worried? So I get that you look worried. Can you look in my eyes and tell me if I look worried? Using those words, he argues, the first thing is, when our children are feeling anxious, when they're caught up in that response, and their thinking brain isn't functioning very well, they're really reliant on their emotional brain. So it's very hard. Their thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex at the front of the brain, it's as if the connections aren't really firing in the front of their brain. They're caught up in this emotional reaction. So by actually getting them to stop and look in your eyes, you're bringing them back to the moment. You're bringing them back to the present. And can you tell me, do I look scared? Do I look anxious? So you're just stopping and making them aware. I can see this is hard for you. I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, is she struggling here? But I know this is going to be okay. As I said, it would be lovely if we could just reassure our anxious children. Nothing will ever go wrong in your world. Nothing bad will happen in your world. We can't. But actually letting them know, I am there for you. I am confident we will get through this. I always think it's like we're going to hold hands and get through this together. It's that response that makes the difference. Can I give you one other tip when we're thinking about how we parent? And it's a scientifically proven method that can really work when our children are caught up with that emotional brain is firing on all cylinders and they're caught up in that response. And it's what we call controlled breathing. When your child is in that moment, there's no point in trying to introduce controlled breathing at that time. It's something that they need to learn when they're calm. They need to practice on a daily basis so it becomes a learned behaviour. So, what is controlled breathing? Just breathing? No, it's not just breathing. If you look at newborn baby breathes down into their tummy. So when they breathe, their tummy moves each time they breathe. We are born, as we call it with children, belly breathers. And it's as if we lose the ability to breathe in that way. So we want to go back to that type of breathing. When we're feeling anxious, as I said already, our breathing becomes more shallow. We're breathing into our chest. We're not breathing right down into our tummies. The controlled breathing is doing that. It's breathing right back into our tummies. To teach it to a little child, you get them to lie on their back. And for little ones, it's the easiest way of doing it. It can help if they put a little cuddly toy, like, those little beanie toys on their tummy. Get them to lie on their back and you get them to take really long, deep breaths into their tummy. And if they see their little breathing buddy, we call the little toy, move, they know they're breathing down into their tummy rather than breathing into their chest. So what you do is you get them to breathe in through their nose, breathe in really deeply, right down into their tummy. They can pause for a moment, back out really slow, deep breaths, out through their mouth. Again, they can pause for a moment. It's a really slow, deep breathing. But the most important thing is that they're breathing right down into their tummy. If you encourage your child to do this, if they do it when they wake up in the mornings, if you do it last thing at night, maybe when they're coming in from school, they practice after they've been fed and watered, you practice it then. It becomes, as I said, a learned behaviour. So what you're aiming for is that on that day when they're standing in the yard and they're starting to feel the anxiety rising within them, when they're starting to feel that chemical reaction, they have learned this belly breathing so that they can automatically go into that breathing when they're under pressure. As I said, they really do need to practice it when they're calm if they are going to be able to put it into practice when they're feeling under pressure. So controlled breathing, belly breathing, definitely absolutely well worth it. So to go back then to not being our second chicken, we need to remember that these responses that are the reactions that are taking place in our child's brain are a primitive reaction. It's not a response that they can change, but it is something they can respond to in terms of their breathing. They can go into their calm breathing to bring down, scientifically proven, bring down their heart rate, bring down their blood pressure. It responds really well to that chemical reaction taking place inside their bodies. And we, as parents, are also practicing our own responses, being aware of the reaction, how we respond to our child's anxiety. Maybe practicing a little bit of controlled breathing ourselves, so that when we feel those responses, when we feel that anxiety rising in our body, we immediately go into our breathing and we remember to respond. The messages we want to give to our children, we want to show empathy, connection. Connection is at the heart of good parenting. Connection is at the heart of everything. So we want to absolutely connect and empathize with them. We're not going to try and reason with them. We're not going to try and argue with them. We're not going to try and tell them there's nothing to be worried about. We're purely connecting. We're empathizing. And then back to Lawrence Cohen's question. Can you look in my eyes and tell me, do I look scared? Do I look anxious? You're reminding them, bringing them into the moment and reminding them, I know we have this. I know you can do this. So we're showing that confidence in them. So I hope that has been of some help, just giving you 2 little tips on how we can support our children when they're struggling with anxiety, and how we can remember that our own responses really do make a difference. I'd like to say thank you again to Meath County Council Library Service. Thank you again to the Helping Ireland at Your Library initiative for inviting me to come along today. And if you would like further information, my Facebook page is Dr. Mary O'Kane Early Years. I post quite a lot about anxiety on that page. Or my Twitter feed is at MOK Early Years. Thank you very much. I hope it's been of some help to you.